because you're currently using the Bluetooth protocol. You have to batch stuff together. But you have to also do this keeping the latency crazy low, like crazy low. Anything to say about the latency?
Yeah, this is a passion project of mine. So I want to build the best mouse in the world.
Yeah.
I don't want to build like the Chevrolet Spark or whatever of electric cars. I want to build like the Tesla Roadster version of a mouse. And I really do think it's quite possible that within 5 to 10 years that most esports competitions are dominated by people with paralysis. This is like a very real possibility for a number of reasons. One is that they'll have access to the best technology to play video games effectively. The second is they have the time to do so. So those two factors together are particularly potent for esport competitors.
Unless people without paralysis are also allowed to implant Neuralink,
right?
Which is another way to interact with a digital device. Mm-hmm. And there's something to that. If it's a fundamentally different experience, more efficient experience, even if it's not like some kind of full-on high bandwidth communication, if it's just the ability to move the mouse 10x faster, like the bits per second, if I can achieve a bits per second at 10x what I can do with the mouse, that's a really interesting possibility of what they can do, especially as you get really good at it with training.
It's definitely the case that you have a higher ceiling of performance. Because you don't have to buffer your intention through your arm, through your muscle, you get just by nature of having a brain implant at all, like 75 millisecond lead time on any action that you're actually trying to take. And there's some nuance to this, like there's evidence that the motor cortex, you can sort of plan out sequences of action, so you may not get that whole benefit all the time. But for sort of like reaction time style games where you just want to, somebody's over here, snipe them, that kind of thing, you actually do have just an inherent advantage because you don't need to go through muscle. So the question is just how much faster can you make it? And we're already, faster than what you would do if you're going through muscle from a latency point of view. And we're in the early stages of that. I think we can push it. Sort of our end-to-end latency right now from brain spike to cursor movement is about 22 milliseconds. If you think about the best mice in the world, the best gaming mice, that's about 5 milliseconds-ish of latency, depending on how you measure, depending how fast your screen refreshes. There's a lot of characteristics that matter there. But yeah, and the rough time for like a neuron in the brain to actually impact your command of your hand is about 75 milliseconds. So if you look at those numbers, you can see that we're already competitive and slightly faster than what you'd get by actually moving your hand. And this is something that, if you ask Noland about it, when he moved the cursor for the first time, we asked him about this. It was something I was super curious about. Like, what does it feel like when you're modulating, a click intention or when you're trying to just move the cursor to the right? He said it moves before he is like actually intending it to, which is kind of a surreal thing and something that, I would love to experience myself one day. What is that like to have the thing just be so immediate, so fluid that it feels like it's happening before you're actually intending it to move?
Yeah, I suppose we've gotten used to that latency, that natural latency that happens. So is currently the bottleneck the communication? So like the Bluetooth communication, what's the actual bottleneck? I mean, there's always going to be a bottleneck, but what's the current bottleneck?
Yeah, a couple things. So kind of hilariously, Bluetooth low energy protocol has some restrictions on how fast you can communicate. So the protocol itself establishes a standard of, the most frequent sort of updates you can send are on the order of 7.5 milliseconds. And as we push latency down to the level of sort of individual spikes impacting control, that level of resolution, that kind of protocol is going to become a limiting factor at some scale. Another sort of important nuance to this is that it's not just the Neuralink itself that's part of this equation. If you start pushing latency sort of below the level of how fast screens refresh, then you have another problem. Like you need your whole system to be able to be as reactive as the sort of limits of what the technology can offer.
Yes.
Like you need the screen, like 120 hertz just doesn't, work anymore if you're trying to have something respond at something that's, at the level of 1 millisecond.
That's a really cool challenge. I also like that for a t-shirt, the best mouse in the world.